So we made it to the end of 2024, and what a year it's been for me. It's just one of the first years where I couldn't wait for the December break to start. But I thought, let's just take a moment to reflect on some of the highs and some of the lows this year. And hopefully it encourages someone. If you need any more detail on any of these aspects, please just leave a comment and I will make a dedicated video of that aspect. So January, it's all exciting. We have all of these plans, and I had many plans for the year, and I was able to accomplish some of them, and many I did not accomplish. So yeah, it was interesting. But I remember the new first year medical students came around and spent some time in the lab as part of the orientation day amazing race, and that was quite exciting and was definitely a highlight for me. Also, my daughter Nasia, she started a new school this year, and as a parent you're always very anxious. Is she going to fit in? Is she going to make friends? But thankfully the year was a success for her. She's made some great friends and really excelled academically. Also in January, I remember we published an article on our simulation launchpad course that we've been running for a few years, and that was quite a success, just to see some of the lessons that we've learned, etc. February, yeah, definitely the major highlight for me is that in February, myself and Chanel, my wife, we celebrated our 10th year wedding anniversary. A decade, lots of lessons learned, lots of highs, lots of lows, but definitely it's been quite a ride over the last 10 years. March, some of the highlights I can think of is we hiked up Lion's Head, myself and Chanel and a few other people. And this was not by coincidence. It was exactly almost a year ago where I had quite a major health scare, and that was completely unexpected. So I have tried to be a lot more intentional about my health and living a more active life. So that was part of that whole journey. But yeah, it's an ongoing project and I'm trying to improve my health day to day. But Lion's Head was interesting. Definitely quite a challenge for me, but I look forward to doing it again. Also, another thing that I'm trying to be a lot more intentional about is spending time with my family. So I remember we took a trip on a boat in the V&A waterfront, and that was lots of fun. That's definitely one of the better things you can do with a family because it's very well priced. And lots of fun. So check it out. It's sightseeing, city sightseeing, and the boat ride within the waterfront is definitely a recommendation you should try out. In April, okay, so April was a big month for me because I decided to apply for the Harvard South Africa Fellowship. So this is something that I've been working on for more than a year. You're so anxious about this and you're thinking, should I apply? Should I even waste my time because it's such a big goal? But I mustered up the courage and I submitted my application in April. So in April we also celebrated my mother's birthday. And it was quite, it's always lovely to just have family and friends around, etc. Also in April, something very unexpected happened to me. I was invited to Cambodia at the University of Puti Sastra. And this was completely unexpected to me because I don't know anyone at the university. And Professor Vento reached out to me by just finding my details online and asked me to come visit them and spend some time at the university, look at their programs and see how their programs could improve. So that was quite exciting and I spent some time there. Interesting culture. Definitely a place I would like to visit again, but that was April. So in May I was approached by the NRF to act as a reviewer for a professor that was applying for NRF rating, and this was completely unexpected, but quite an interesting process. I think I learned a lot to be on the other side because in the future I definitely intend applying for NRF rating. So it was quite insightful to be on the other side and just have a look and see what the criteria is, etc. So that was quite a nice experience. Also in May, a group of learners from Hyde Park College in Mitchells Plain spend some time in the lab, and this is always lots of fun. It was definitely a goal for me to invite more schools from disadvantaged areas to spend some time in the lab, just give them a little bit of insight as to see what happens there. For many of them, it will be the first time that they enter a space such as UCT, so I always enjoy doing that. So in June was a busy month for me in terms of traveling. So first, I spent some time in Prague at the 2024 SESAM conference. This is always lots of fun. So Prague is a beautiful country and definitely a place that I'd love to visit again for work and just to do as a tourist. So yeah, that was the first bit of traveling in June. Thereafter, I went to Durban for the 2024 SAI conference, and this is always great fun. It's the premier conference for health professions education in Southern Africa. And this was a great one actually because I ended up winning the best poster presentation award, and this was completely unexpected to the point. It was so unexpected that I'd actually left a little bit earlier from the conference, and then at the final session it was announced that I won, and I wasn't even there, and a good friend of mine had to receive the prize on my behalf. Also in June, I received some feedback from Professor Vento, the professor in Cambodia that I had visited the month prior, and he informed me that based on my report and my visit, that he approached his VC and actually argued for a position of Director of Simulation and Skills at university, and that was approved. So that was such great feedback to receive. July was also quite an interesting month for me because in 2022, myself and a few other colleagues across the university, we applied for UCT's Grand Challenges grant, which is a major grant that we applied for. And we made it to the final round, but then unfortunately did not receive that grant. So in 2024 of July, the university actually came back to us to say that they've reconsidered our application and our application was approved. So of course this was completely unexpected, but such a pleasant surprise. And we're currently busy working, preparing for that grant, where we actually collaborating with colleagues all over Africa, and we are developing an open access textbook for healthcare simulation. So that's going to be one of the major projects that I'm working on in 2025. Also in July, the Harvard South Africa fellowship team actually reached out to me to say that I was shortlisted for the fellowship. So this, of course, was such a big surprise to me because I needed it. Because you apply for these things, but you never really expect to progress. So this was, such an unexpected development for me. And as part of the shortlisting, I had to travel to Johannesburg. So I remember the night before, I was so sick with the flu. But we have to go. So I went through, and that night in the hotel, I was so sick. But the next day, still felt completely terrible. But then I entered the room, and when I entered the room, I was completely caught off guard because it was quite a big panel, and this panel included people from all over the world. Actually, they had some professors that flew in from Harvard. We had some professors in South Africa, some professors from Kenya and various other countries in Africa. And it was quite a long interview, and it was challenging questions, but I left there feeling rather confident, I must say, because yes, it was a challenging process, but I believe that I put my best foot forward. Also in July, my eldest daughter Nasia celebrated her 8th birthday. And it's always interesting for, celebrating her birthday because it's in the heart of winter. So, we're always so anxious to see what's the weather going to do, what can we do, etc. But this year we had an indoor venue and it was quite successful. So that was quite a nice event. Towards the end of July, I received some feedback from a conference that I submitted an abstract for in Glasgow. So of course we're quite excited because it was positive feedback. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend that conference because of work commitments, etc. So in August, I received an invitation to attend a conference in Morocco. And this is quite a nice invitation, I must say, because I had just met the team from Morocco at the conference I attended in Czech Republic, the SESAM conference, and we hit it off. We hit it off immediately, and subsequent to that, they invited me to attend their conference in Morocco in February 2025. So yeah, I'm quite excited to attend that conference. And I'm looking forward to it. Now, I definitely plan on documenting that trip. So, follow me or subscribe if you want to see some updates from that conference in Morocco. Also in August, I was nominated by one of the VCs at the University of Cape Town to represent the university on the Australia-Africa Research Network. So yeah, that was quite a nice experience. So this year I attended a few meetings, and I must say it's been quite stimulating to just engage with colleagues from all over Africa. And hopefully next year, 2025, I might be traveling to Australia to just network with our colleagues on that side. Finally, one of the highlights in August was I finally managed to publish one of my articles from my PhD, and that was published in the African Journal of Emergency Medicine. So that was a major accomplishment for me because it had taken quite a bit of time for me to publish that paper. So September is my birthday month, and I must say that September did not disappoint. Firstly, and probably the biggest highlight for me, was that the Harvard South Africa Fellowship finally got back to me and informed me that my application was successful. So of course this was such a big accomplishment for me. You apply for these applications, but there's always the possibility that it will be unsuccessful. And I've had many applications in the past where it has been unsuccessful. But when this news came up, I remembered vividly I was still in traffic with my wife, and I just became quite numb actually, because what do you mean that I'm attending Harvard next year? So I just wanted to give God all the praise and all the glory. And again, I plan to document that journey quite nicely when I do attend Harvard this next year. And if there's any questions about the process or anything, let me know in the comments, and I could make a dedicated video about the application process or just anything around that. So because of the Harvard South Africa Fellowship that was successful, there were many other things that happened as a result of that. So I had my first radio interview with Clarence Ford, and that was quite an experience. You enter this space and you're thinking it's going to be a live radio interview. I hope I don't embarrass anyone, my wife or my mother, etc. But I think it went well. It was quite a nice experience. Also in September, many newspapers reached out to me just to hear about this whole fellowship, etc. And that was quite an experience, because what do you mean I'm on the front page of this newspaper and that newspaper, and journalists are reaching out to me and phoning me and asking questions, etc. So I must say that few weeks in September, it was such an experience. But I just want to give God all the praise and all the honor. Also in September still, my wife celebrated her 35th birthday. I don't know if I'm supposed to say age on this platform, but anyway, it was her 35th birthday. And that was also quite a nice experience. Often we take birthdays for granted, but we know if we just look around, that is definitely not something that we can take for granted. So yeah, September was a good month, definitely. So in October, some of the highlights that I can remember is one of it was attending the Africa Health Conference. And this again was such an interesting experience, because one of the organizing committee reached out to me. I was planning on attending this conference, but fortunately, prior to me registering for the conference, the organizing committee reached out to me and asked if I want to be a VIP guest. So, oh my goodness, I was like, definitely, of course. It was such a nice experience, because again, I don't want to act as if this is just things that's been happening all along and what's just nothing to stress about, etc. It's something that I definitely feel is quite a privilege and quite an honor, and I do not take it for granted. So that was quite an experience, quite a big conference, I must say. Lots of exhibitions, lots of people. It felt like everyone was there. And definitely a conference that I'd like to attend in the coming years again. Just a side note, but something that happened during that conference that was quite a moment for me is that one evening, just randomly, I decided to take a walk over to the waterfront, because the days are quite busy. And as I was walking, I saw a bit of a commotion happening just here in front of me. And as I approached, I found a young man just laying in the road, completely unconscious. So of course you're a little bit, caught off guard because, hey, what's happening here? I don't know what the mechanism is, what happened, etc. But of course you have this hesitancy by everyone else to stop and help, etc. And of course I stopped, and what I later discovered was it was a young man, also actually a student at the University of Cape Town, who had a accident on his skateboard. So him and a group of friends was just, riding, and don't know what happened exactly, and he fell off the skateboard, knocked his head quite bad, and was completely unconscious when I got there. Shortly after I got there, he regained consciousness and was very combative, etc. As a result of this head injury. But anyway, I stabilized as best as I could, phoned his mother, who was sitting in Durban at the time, because he stays on res, and just informed her of what's happening and where, phoned an ambulance and they came through and where he's going, etc. So that was quite an interesting experience, and again just reaffirmed for me that nothing happens by accident. I wasn't planning on going out that evening. But at the end of that, at the last minute, I just decided to take a walk over to waterfront, and then this happened. So again, sometimes you feel that, why things are happening, why must I do this, why must I do that? But, God knows. So anyway, that was another experience in the month of October. Also in October, I presented at the inauguration of the Kenyan Simulation Society. So this was an online presentation because unfortunately I wasn't able to attend in person. But that is also one of the highlights definitely for me. I'm quite excited to see what this society is going to do in the future. Big highlight for me in October, which didn't directly happen to me, but I definitely felt I was as excited as the person is. My wife was appointed in quite a senior role, and I must say I was as excited, if not more excited than her. And that has really just been a long journey and many disappointments leading up to that, but at the end of the day, God is faithful. And yeah, he just proved it again. So it's not our time, but it's God's time. And that was one of the major highlights for the year for me, actually. Even though it didn't directly happen to me, definitely I was as excited. So in November, the highlight for me was we developed, myself and a few colleagues and a colleague from King's College London, Prof. Reedy. He visited us for the second time and we presented a debriefing workshop. This was quite an insightful experience for me because we had to develop this workshop from the ground up and then offer it, and it was very well received and definitely one of the highlights for me for 2024. Also in November, it was my youngest daughter's 3rd birthday, so oh my goodness, it feels like the other day that I was standing in theatre watching her being delivered. But here we are celebrating her 3rd birthday. Again, it's been such a privilege for me to watch her grow up and develop as a young woman, even though she's just 3. It's just been such amazing to see how her personality develops and how it's so different from my other daughter. So yeah, that was the highlight for me those were the highlights for me in November. So in December, there were some highlights. At the end of the year, I was counting the days down for my leave to start. It's been a long year, and when it finally started, it was such a relief for me. That's the Friday, and then the Sunday we unfortunately had a break-in at our house, and this was such an experience, I must say. Fortunately for us, we weren't at home, but as is the case, many things was taken from our house, and the things can be replaced. I think what's been quite challenging for my wife and I and the kids is that it's such an invasion of privacy to think that someone entered your most private spaces and were in your cupboards and in your clothes. And that's been quite an experience for us actually. It's very new, just a few weeks ago. But again, everything happens for a reason. And I found myself going through all of the emotions of anger, frustration. And I think now I'm at the stage where I'm just thankful that, we're okay. No one got hurt. Unfortunately, our dog got hurt because he clearly, during the ordeal, was able to enter the house and interrupt the guys, but in the process got quite hurt. So fortunately for him, he's okay. He's recovering nicely. But that was quite an experience for us, I must say. Just like as I say, to have someone or a group of people just enter your space was quite an interesting experience. Anyway, so that was my year. As we sit on the last day of 2024, I've learned a lot, many things. But at the end of the day, I just want to say that if I have to theme the year of 2024 for me, it's definitely that it's been quite a privilege for me. Sometimes we get into sometimes we might get into the mindset where these things are just happening and you take it for granted, but I've definitely realized that it's all a privilege. Even in the good times, even in the difficult times, it's all a privilege. When work gets tough, yes, it's tough, but at the end of the day, it's a privilege to have a work. Many people don't have work. When family life gets tough, yes, it can get very difficult. I think parenthood has been the most difficult job for me. But at the end of the day, it's a privilege. There are many people that don't have the privilege of being parents. So that's been the one theme for me, is that it is a privilege, and it's just important that we change our perspective and the way we see things. And that's, like I said, that's my theme for 2024, but definitely something that I'm going to carry over into 2025. Some of the other things that I cannot put exactly to a month, but it was some of the highlights for me is one of the things that I really wanted to improve on this year was just my leadership skills. It's something I think that you never really arrive. It's something that you have to work on continuously. And one of the major highlights for me is that many of my team members within the team were able to get promotions and regrades this year. And it was such a humbling experience for me to just know that you had some small little part to play in that. Of course, its big part is just the hard work and the dedication of the staff members. But it was such a humbling experience to be a part of that. So yeah, that's my video. That's my reflection for 2024. I challenge you to do the same. Sometimes we might think that the year was not so good or etc. But when we sit and we spend some time reflecting on how good God has been over the year, I think you will be amazed. So if there's anything, as I said, I know I went through quite quick. If there's anything that you want more detail on, put it in the comments and I'll make a dedicated video on that. So until next time, have a blessed 2024, what remains of it, and an even more blessed 2025.